Bruce Willis may have made his name as the wisecracking everyman in Die Hard, but off-camera, he's built a reputation for something a lot less charming, being notoriously difficult with certain co-stars and directors. Over decades in Hollywood, he's been part of feuds that have spilled out of the editing room and into the headlines, turning once promising collaborations into bitter memories. Today, we're counting down 5 actors Bruce Willis hated the most, the ones who got under his skin, clashed with him on set, and in some cases, swore never to work with him again. And when we get to number 1, you'll hear the story of a feud so intense that one actor actually walked off set for good. But first, let's talk about a partnership that seemed perfect until it collapsed in spectacular fashion. Number 5. Kevin Smith. On paper, Bruce Willis and Kevin Smith should have been a dream team. Smith, the indie comedy darling known for Clerks and Chasing Amy, brought wit and offbeat humor. Willis, the action star with surprisingly good comedic timing, brought box office muscle. Their project together was Cop Out in 2010, a buddy cop comedy that paired Willis with Tracy Morgan, directed by Smith. But instead of laughs, what happened behind the scenes was closer to a slow-motion train wreck. Smith has been candid, brutally candid about his experience working with Willis, calling it one of the most miserable professional experiences of his life. According to Smith, Willis was detached, uncooperative, and often seemed like he didn't want to be there. He refused to rehearse scenes, pushed back on direction, and would sometimes give only the bare minimum in performance until the cameras were rolling. Smith described it as soul-crushing, saying that the movie was a really hard shoot, almost entirely because of Willis's attitude. One of the biggest sticking points was publicity. After filming Wrapped, Smith said Willis flat out refused to participate in promotional events, press junkets, or even basic marketing photos. For a studio banking on star power to sell a movie, that was a huge problem. Smith claims he had to practically beg Willis to take part in a single photo session for the film's poster. Even then, the mood was icy. At one point during production, tensions reportedly got so high that Smith, known for his easygoing vibe on set, found himself actively avoiding his own leading man just to keep his temper in check. Smith didn't hold back years later when talking about it on podcasts and interviews. He called Willis a fucking dick, his words, and said he had never been treated with such disdain by a collaborator. Fans were stunned because Willis had previously been seen as someone who got along with directors like Quentin Tarantino, M. Night Shyamalan, and Robert Zemeckis. But Cop Out revealed another side, a Bruce Willis who, in Smith's eyes, was checked out, uninterested, and unwilling to be a team player. Willis, for his part, has never publicly fired back at Smith's comments. He stayed silent, letting the movie's lackluster reviews and middling box office speak for themselves. But industry insiders say the damage was mutual. Willis didn't enjoy being directed by someone he saw as inexperienced in handling a big-budget studio project, and Smith never wanted to deal with that level of resistance again. They've never collaborated since, and given the way Smith still talks about it over a decade later, it's safe to say they never will. The Willis-Smith feud stands out because it wasn't about a single explosive fight. It was about a sustained tension, day after day, that drained the energy out of a comedy that was supposed to be light and fun. It's a reminder that in Hollywood, chemistry on screen means nothing if the people behind the camera can't stand each other. Number 4. Sybil Shepherd. Bruce Willis's big television break came on Moonlighting, the romantic comedy detective series that ran from 1985 to 1989. He and Sybil Shepherd played private investigators whose sexual tension was the engine of the show, and audiences loved their banter and chemistry. But behind the camera, the sparks were far from romantic. The two stars clashed almost from the beginning, and their working relationship became one of Hollywood's most famous on-set feuds. Part of the problem was personality. Willis, riding the momentum of his breakout role, brought a loose improvisational energy to the set, often riffing on lines and throwing in ad-libs. Shepherd, already an established star and former model, preferred sticking to the script and keeping a professional pace. Crew members recalled days when filming would grind to a halt because the two were locked in tense discussions, or, in some cases, outright shouting matches over how a scene should be played. The production was notoriously chaotic, with frequent script rewrites and delays, and each blamed the other for some of the dysfunction. Shepard accused Willis of being arrogant and dismissive, especially after Die Hard turned him into a major movie star midway through the series' run. Willis, in turn, reportedly saw Shepard as difficult, high-maintenance, and unwilling to play off his more spontaneous style. Their dislike for each other became so obvious that it was joked about in the press, and even in interviews with the cast and crew. By the later seasons, the tension was so bad that the show's creators had to find ways to keep the two leads apart whenever possible, rewriting episodes so their characters shared fewer scenes. When Moonlighting finally ended, both of them were publicly diplomatic, but the underlying animosity was no secret. Years later, in separate interviews, Shepard admitted they didn't get along, though she softened her comments by calling it creative tension, while Willis never went into detail but made it clear he wasn't eager to reminisce about those days. The feud was a perfect example of how on-screen chemistry can mask deep, off-screen resentment, and for fans who loved the witty repartee between David and Maddie, it was a surprise to learn that some of that sharpness came from genuine irritation rather than scripted charm. Number 3. Sylvester Stallone. In the world of action movies, Bruce Willis and Sylvester Stallone seemed like natural allies. Both were box office powerhouses of the 1980s and 1990s. Both helped define the modern action hero, and both were part of the Expendables franchise, a celebration of exactly that era. But behind the scenes, their relationship took a sharp turn from camaraderie to rivalry. It started well enough, with Stallone bringing Willis on board for the first two Expendables films. Willis played the role of Mr. Church, a mysterious CIA contact who recruits Stallone's mercenary team. Audiences liked the part, and the films were commercial hits. But trouble began when Stallone was putting together The Expendables 3 in 2013. Reports surfaced that Willis was being dropped from the cast, and it wasn't because of creative differences. According to multiple industry insiders, Stallone offered Willis a 3-day shoot for a $4 million paycheck. Willis allegedly demanded $1 million more for the same 3 days and refused to budge when Stallone said no. The negotiations fell apart, and Stallone replaced Willis with Harrison Ford. That's when the feud went public. Stallone tweeted, without naming names, "Greedy and lazy, a sure formula for career failure." The message was widely interpreted as a direct shot at Willis, and in Hollywood terms, it was an unusually blunt and personal attack. The two had been friendly before, even co-owning the Planet Hollywood restaurant chain alongside Arnold Schwarzenegger in the 90s. But after that tweet, the friendship appeared to be over. While Willis never publicly responded to Stallone's insult, insiders say he was furious about being called out so openly. He also reportedly felt that Stallone's offer undervalued his contribution to the franchise and that the, quote, 3 days of work description didn't reflect the travel, preparation, and scheduling changes it would have required. Fans of the franchise were disappointed, not just because they liked Willis's character, but because the tension between two action icons felt like a crack in the carefully maintained image of camaraderie the series was selling. Stallone eventually softened his stance in later interviews, saying he and Willis had, quote, made peace, but they have never worked together again, and the sting of that public falling out still lingers in the industry's memory. Number 2. John McTiernan. When people think of Bruce Willis's career-defining role, they think of John McClane in Die Hard. And when they think of Die Hard, they think of director John McTiernan, the man who took a mid-budget action script and turned it into one of the greatest action movies ever made. You'd think that shared success would form a lifelong creative bond, but the truth is their relationship soured badly during and after the film's production. In 1988, Willis was still mostly known for his comedic role on Moonlighting, and there was skepticism about whether he could carry an action film. McTiernan fought for him, but once filming began, tensions quickly emerged. Crew members recall disagreements over Willis's delivery of lines, with McTiernan pushing for a more everyman, vulnerable tone, while Willis preferred to lean into the cocky, wisecracking style he'd honed on television. The pressure was immense. The shoot was grueling, with elaborate stunt sequences, long nights, and constant script tweaks. McTiernan was known for being meticulous and sometimes blunt in his criticism, and Willis, who was still adjusting to the demands of leading a massive film, reportedly bristled at the constant notes. While both men kept things professional enough to finish the movie, insiders say the atmosphere was icy by the time they wrapped. Die Hard became a massive hit, launching Willis into the Hollywood stratosphere, but instead of reuniting for the sequels, McTiernan stayed away. He returned only for Die Hard with a Vengeance in 1995, and even then, the partnership was tense. By that point, Willis was a major star with significant creative control, and the dynamic had flipped. Now it was McTiernan who felt pushed around. Rumors circulated of clashes over action sequences, dialogue changes, and even which takes to use in the final cut. Both men have avoided trashing each other in public, but their reluctance to work together again speaks volumes. McTiernan has hinted in interviews that he found Willis, quote, challenging, while Willis has all but erased the director's name from his Die Hard anecdotes. It's a reminder that even when two people make cinematic magic together, personal chemistry off-screen can be a completely different story. Number 1. Bruce Dern. The most infamous clash of Bruce Willis's career didn't just end in cold stares or public insults. It ended with another actor literally walking off the set. It happened during the troubled production of The Prince in 2014, a crime thriller that paired Willis with veteran actor Bruce Dern. Dern, known for his intense, unpredictable performances and his deep respect for preparation, came to the project ready to work through the material carefully, digging into his character's motivations. But Willis, by this stage of his career, had developed a reputation for working quickly, sticking closely to what was on the page, and not indulging in lengthy discussions about subtext. From the start, their approaches clashed. On the first days of shooting, Dern tried to engage Willis in conversation about their shared scenes, offering ideas and small changes to deepen the dynamic. Willis reportedly brushed him off, saying something to the effect of, "Just say the lines." That attitude didn't sit well with Dern, who had spent decades crafting layered performances in films for directors like Hal Ashby, Quentin Tarantino, and Alexander Payne. Tension built with each passing day. Willis kept his interactions short, avoided eye contact between takes, and was said to be impatient when Dern asked for multiple rehearsals. Crew members later described the atmosphere as, quote, thick, with everyone aware that the two leads were operating on entirely different wavelengths. The breaking point came during a pivotal scene that Dern felt needed more emotional weight. He asked the director for another run-through before cameras rolled. Willis, already in position, allegedly sighed loudly and muttered something dismissive under his breath. Dern stopped cold, stared at him, and after a long pause said, "I'm not doing this." He walked off the set, went back to his trailer, and refused to come out for the rest of the day. The production scrambled to smooth things over, and Dern did return to finish his scenes, but the damage was done. Word spread quickly in industry circles that Dern had clashed hard with Willis, and that it was bad enough to halt filming. For fans, it was shocking. Bruce Dern is a consummate professional, not known for diva behavior, and for him to reach a point where he'd rather walk away than finish a scene said everything about how toxic the dynamic had become. Neither man has spoken in detail about the incident publicly, but the two have never worked together again, and those who were there say the tension never eased for the rest of the shoot. It stands as a rare, raw example of just how badly personalities can collide on set. And it's the one time Bruce Willis's reputation for being difficult pushed a fellow Hollywood veteran to simply call it quits in the middle of the job. From indie directors to Hollywood legends, Bruce Willis's career has been marked not just by blockbuster hits, but by some of the most talked-about behind-the-scenes feuds in the business. These 5 clashes show that even the biggest stars can find themselves in battles that rival anything they've faced on screen. Whether it was a slow burn of constant tension, a public war of words, or a walk-off that stopped production cold, each of these stories proves one thing. In Hollywood, action isn't limited to what happens when the cameras are rolling.